Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Applied Leadership in Conservation. My name is Robert Ganzamore, and I am so excited to be your host this evening. So tonight we have two brilliant speakers who know each other really well. We have my good friend Sela Malanga, whom we met for the first time in person last year, and I was also intrigued by her energy and ability to draw everyone's attention with insightful jokes and emotional awareness while speaking. So I'm so excited to hear Sela present tonight. We also have Dean Carlisle, a man behind the dream that was turned into reality. He is the founder and CEO of Lessons in Conservation, a youth-led nonprofit that exposes children to the beauty that remains within the landscape of our beautiful continent. Dean started the organization when he was 22. At 24, the organization was in 4 countries. Now, Dean is 29 years old and he is leading a well-established conservation organization on the continent. I think I would not be wrong if I can call him inspiration of the youth. He's in our age gap. So both speakers tonight will be talking about how much Africa needs us and the purpose-driven leadership. Sela is going to start with a short presentation, and later on, I will have a panel discussion with Dean on questions that I prepared. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Sela on the screen to start her presentation.
Thank you so much, Robert, for the kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. My name is Sela Malanga, as Robert has said. I work with Lessons in Conservation as the national manager and with ShareSkin Africa as the Southern African coordinator. And I'm so excited to be your speaker today to talk to you on the topic purpose-driven leadership for conservation and beyond. Africa needs you. Imagine you wake up and you realize you've been living in someone else's dream, not your own dreams, but someone else. How would you feel? Like choosing a career because the society expects that from you, not because it brings some fire inside your heart. Following a path because everyone grabs to that path, but not because it's something that your heart really wants. And then one day you wake up and realize, look back and wonder, was this really my life? Or was I just playing a role in someone else's script? The truth is, most of us young people in Africa, we are at risk of that. We inherit the definition of success that doesn't match our calling, our true calling. We inherit this definition from be it family, social media, or even the world. And when this happens, I'm telling you, leadership becomes a title and not a purpose. In the picture that you're seeing here, this is a young boy who became a doctor because everyone said it's so cool to be a doctor, and he was like, no, I also want to do something that people think is cool. But in his heart, he was so sad. Why? Because that's not what his heart wanted. But purpose-driven leadership is so different. It begins when you stop asking, what should I do to be successful? And it starts when you ask yourself, why am I here? And what is that different that only I can make? That's when this leadership comes in. Because your why is the seed of genuine leadership. The leadership that conservation needs. The leadership that our beautiful continent, Africa, needs. And it's this leadership that transforms followers into leaders. And it makes your impact outlive you. So today, I don't want us to talk about leadership as a power or a position, But I want us to explore leadership as a purpose. Because if each one of us here can find their own purpose, I'm telling you, we can be able to shape not only our futures, but the future of our continent, Africa. So, what is purpose-driven leadership? Purpose-driven leadership is when a leader leads with a clear why. When you're leading with your known purpose, you know why you're a leader. And also, I would love to call it as a shared leadership. Why do I call it a shared leadership? Because this is when a leader leads, he shares his passion, his purpose with others. And at the same time, he listens and embraces the purpose of other people. That's what we call purpose-driven leadership. Now the question should be, how do you come to know what your purpose is? How do you come to identify your purpose? I am going to share with you my journey on how I identified my purpose. So when I was young, I loved visiting my grandmother's village. I was so lucky to be just an hour away from where she was staying. And every holiday read to her house. But then when I reached high school, my school was far away from my grandmother's village. And I stayed 4 years without going back to see her and without seeing the village. The next time I went there, it seemed to be a different place. It seems like it wasn't the same place that I loved being. Something was different. This place had long pine trees and it had a pleasant weather. It was so beautiful. And those people from Malawi who know Misuku, they would agree with me. Misuku was the London of Malawi because the weather there, it was raining all the time throughout the year. But this time around, the land was bare. It was bare, all the trees were gone. That's when I realized my quiet love for nature. It was a profound passion that needed a purpose. But that heartbreak did not stop me. Rather, it fueled me. It's what led me to leave my job as a teacher. I was a teacher. After secondary school, I studied and became a primary school teacher. But then I felt like something was still missing, something that my heart wants. My heart wasn't satisfied. I loved being around children. Like, children are my favorites because I'm a last born. I never got a chance to raise someone. So when I go and teach them, I felt like, wow, I'm now like, I'm being a big sister. But then something was missing. That's when I went to the university and studied veterinary medicine. And this was a step towards my purpose. I was just starting to understand my purpose. I believe each one of us here is on their journey of trying to find their purpose in life. I found my purpose through my past experience and by looking inward. What do I mean by saying looking inward? By looking at my passion. What is my passion? That's how I found my own purpose. But some people do find their purpose by looking forward and asking themselves, what do I want to be remembered for? In 50 years from now, what do I want people to remember me for? And some, they find their purpose by looking outward, looking and asking themselves, what do I have that other people can benefit from me, that I can help other people with? So these are the different ways how people find their own passion, or their own purpose in life. So my journey became even clearer when I joined Lessons in Conservation in 2020, September. And I can't believe it has already been 5 years of happiness. Yeah, so Lessons in Conservation is a youth-led multinational organization that bridges the gap between people and wildlife. It creates a connection, it fosters a connection between people and wildlife. through teaching children using interactive. Hey, the English is not English. Interactive, yeah, interactive lessons. Yeah. So 2020 was my favorite year, and Saturdays, I loved Saturdays. And my favorite activity of Saturday was going outside our university to teach in the villages. I was always looking forward to Saturdays. 2020 is one of the years that was so tough to me. But then when lessons in conservation came into my life, I felt like I needed to live. I had a purpose. Because when I teach people, when I teach those children and see how happy they were, my heart was filled with fulfillment. And I knew that this is my purpose. In 2021, I was introduced to Leadership for Conservation in Africa and ShareSkin Africa. This is how I found my family. You can see on this picture, the above picture, these are my team members of Lessons in Conservation. And down here is a group of young people from the LCA. I found when I met these two families, I knew that I found my tribe, I found my people, and I found my place where I want to stay. So today, from today, I want each one of us to embrace this different way. To be a purpose-driven leader. A leader who doesn't just manage, but a leader who nurtures. A leader who's like a green thumb. A leader who listens and observes and clears a path for others to grow to their full potential, you know? This is the kind of leadership that Africa needs. Because if you can clear the path for others to grow to their full potential, and let's imagine that each one of us here grows to their full potential. Imagine how big the difference can be that we can all make. This is what our continent needs from us. When you find your purpose, it will become your compass. As I said, 2020 was not an easy year for me. I was grieving for someone close to me. It was a year like I've lost someone, and COVID has hit us. The schools were closed, and yeah, I was having a hard time. But because I had a purpose, it gave me strength to navigate my personal challenges. My life in 2020 was feeling so empty. But then when I found my purpose, I knew that I needed to live for these children. I needed to live to teach people so that I should make up for the trees that we lost in my mother's village. What I'm telling you is, when you are guided by a strong sense of purpose, you will be more resilient and you will stay grounded no matter what. In life, a lot happens. In life, you'll be knocked off track. There will be times where you feel like, no, I can't do this. No, I'm done with this. I don't want to. You don't feel like living. But your purpose will bring you back to the right track. I think I've spoken a lot to your heart. Now let me give you some data for your head. Some facts for your brain. Okay. A research that was done by Dioret, it showed that companies that have a clear sense of purpose have 30% more innovations and 40% higher retention. Purpose isn't just a nice thing to have. It is a strategic advantage. Where there is purpose, ideas thrive. When people feel like their work is part of something bigger, they are more willing to contribute that extra energy, and also take risk where there's need to. They feel safe to share their ideas, and they grow knowing that they are connected to a shared mission. This picture that you're seeing here, is a picture that we took 3 weeks ago when Dean and the team and me were doing a team building. And these team members were given an assignment to build a tower using the spaghetti and the marshmallows. You can see from this picture clearly that everyone was participating. Everyone was eager to participate, was happy to bring in their own ideas. Why? They had a purpose and they were feeling safe to share ideas. This is what happens when you have a purpose in life. So now that you have understood the importance, the power of purpose, and why it matters to our careers, our teams, and our continent, I want to give you a tool. This tool isn't a final product, it's just a blueprint. It's something that can change. It's a living guide on how you can change your passion to a powerful purpose, how you can lead with your purpose. If you have a pen somewhere, you can write this down because you will need them as a young leader. The first one is share stories. And the second one, make connections. And then empower ownership, promote values, lead by vulnerability. Now we're going to dive in one by one. Okay. Let me share you a story about my very first set of lessons that I did in 2020. We taught 20 children from a school called Bunda Primary. And among the 20, there was a child called Kelvin. Kelvin enjoyed the lesson so much. And when we went for that excursion, Dean was also there. When we went for the excursion, he got to saw an elephant in his life for the very first time. And of course, it was also my first time to see an elephant that time. And he was so curious, he was so invested in this. And when we came back, he graduated from lessons in conservation. But one day, as I was going into the campus at school, Kelvin called up, Sarah. Then I looked back, I saw it was him. And then he came to me and said, Sarah, I wanted to invite you to my home. You should come and see. I've planted some trees. After learning the importance of trees, I've planted some trees at home. Oh my God, my heart, at that moment. Oh my God, I was like, so these things, that's how they work. So this child was so inspired up to the extent of planting a tree. I went the next day and he had planted 4, not only 1 tree, but 4 trees. I've told you a story, but in this story, I'm also telling you what we do at Lessons, because we foster the connection between people and the wildlife. It's what we did to Kelvin. So instead of always reading out visions, reading out those documents, the mission statements, you can tell your team stories. If you tell them stories, I'm telling you, people will always remember stories. People will love stories. I also love stories a lot. And I remember the first time that we talked with Dean after I've done my interviews and I'm successful, he shared with us stories on the difference that they made in the children that they have taught. And when I heard the stories, I was like, oh my God, I didn't make the mistake. This is what I want to do, So always, I want you to remember that people don't remember strategies, but they remember stories. People don't remember those strategy documents that you give them, but stories, it will always it will always get stuck into their heads and they will carry them wherever they go. So turn your visions into stories. Share stories, lots of stories. Okay, the next pillar is cultivate genuine connection. Cultivate genuine connection. As a leader, your role is to listen deeply. Your role as a leader is to listen deeply. What do I mean when I say listen deeply? Listen deeply means you should listen to understand and not just listen to answer. No, listen to understand. And you should also build a foundation of vulnerability and psychological safety. This is how you build a real team, that the one that feels like a family. But how do you do that? When you are interacting with your team, don't just always show the greater side of you. Show them your weakness as well. That will make them understand that you are also human. You also make mistakes, and they will feel safe to make their mistakes as well. We learn through mistakes. So if they feel comfortable trying some things out, even when they make mistakes, that's when they'll be like good people. They'll be good leaders as well, you know. If you are afraid of making mistakes, you will never go somewhere. But if you make some mistake, you will go somewhere. You will reach somewhere because you learn from the mistakes. So make sure you create a connection that people feel safe. You are vulnerable, and you should be vulnerable. You should be free. You should feel free to say, I messed up. I'm sorry. I will do better next time. When you do that as a leader, your team member will connect. Your team members will connect with you. Okay. The next one is empower a culture of ownership. Okay. For this one, I want to give this example. So think of those strict parents. When some parents, they're so strict when they're raising their children. They tell their children, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do this. And when the child says, why? They'll be like, because I said so. You know, they won't explain the why to the child. And I'm telling you, when the parent looks the other way or goes out of sight of this child, the child will do something that will shock the life out of their parents. Because now he has freedom and he will try out everything. But to those parents that explain the why to their children, explain it clearly. My child, if you go out at night, this might happen, this. And they trust their children. They just let them be free. That child will go out, but will always be to make sure that they don't they don't break their trust, their parents' trust, you know. So you have to do the same thing with your team members. Trust them. One thing that our director at ShareSkin Africa does, Johan, when we receive a request for a series, he would say, Stella, this is your baby. Ah, Robert, this is your baby. When he says your baby, you know you are on top of it. And you will make sure that you don't break the trust, that you don't break the ownership that they have given you, and you do your best. That's what a leader should do. And when it comes to LIC, Dean trusted us, me and the team, just through Zoom. He did the interviews through Zoom, and he trained us through Zoom, and he let us go out and teach in the name of resource in conservation. When we went out, we were so, what's the English now? We were so accountable because we didn't want to break the trust that Dean has put in us. That's what happens. You know, people, you can't force people to be accountable. People choose to be accountable when they are trusted. So trust your team members. Okay. The third one, now I've lost, I think this is the third one. The third one is reinforce with values. The person you're seeing here is my colleague, Charles. Charles is so amazing. He's someone who reinforces with values. What do I mean when I say reinforce with values? There was a day when we were having a meeting and a team member was leading that meeting. Charles and I were sitting in there, just looking at how things there. We are participating, and it happened that this team member hosted the meeting so well. He made sure that everyone felt comfortable to share their ideas and to open up, you know. And at the end of the meeting, Charles said, "Well done." But he didn't stop there. He said, "Well done for making sure that, for making people feel so comfortable and making sure that everyone raises, like everyone says something." It felt like we're one big family. He connected it to our value, which is our value, which is family, you know. So when you say something, you make sure you connect it to your values. That way, your people will never forget your value, the values. They will live with the values. All right, let's move on. The last one is lead by vulnerability. One thing that you have to know, people will remember a lot, will learn a lot from what you do than what you say. I will repeat this because it's very important. People will learn more to what you do than what you say. So in 2021, was it 2022? Yeah, that was my first time going out of Malawi. I went for a meeting, the LCA meeting in Botswana. And it was my first time meeting the CEO for LCA, Mr. Chris Murray. And, you know, I was having that feeling that I was thinking in my head. I was like, oh, is this the place to stay or not? You know, when a person first goes into an organization or into a team, they have that thinking where they have that feeling in their head where their mind is divided into two. It's 50-50. Is this a place where to stay? Maybe it is, you know. So I was looking closely. One thing that I learned from Chris, this might sound like it's common sense, but I'm telling you, it's not common sense. Chris taught me, his actions taught me that we need to thank people, not because they have given us something for free, but even for offering their services. Because we would go out for dinner, and when we eat dinner, we finish, he would call the chefs and say, these are the people that cooked for us, let us thank them. And we would thank them in their language, would clap hands, you know. And to me, I was like, oh my God, we are thinking, but you pay for all of this. And later on, I learned that even when you have money, you still need someone to do the service for you. The money cannot cook for you. You need a chef to cook for you. And when I came back, even when I'm going to town, I get a taxi. When I'm going out, I'll say thank you. I'll pay, but I'll still say thank you. I buy something from the shop, I say thank you. I go to the hospitals in my house, they're for free. I get it. I know that that's their job, but I say thank you. And that comes from deep down in my heart, because I know that without their services, I wouldn't have been able to get that, you know? So this is an example that people learn a lot from what we do more than what we say. And to Dean, one thing that I learned from him, for the 5 years that I've known Dean, there haven't been a year where he hasn't said happy birthday. He hasn't said happy birthday, Sarah. He always checks on me and the rest of the team and say, hi, how are you? How's your life? What's happening? You know, that thing. And it makes me feel like, oh, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm part of the family, you know? So I copied that from him, and I started using that as well on my team members. I always check on them. I don't miss their birthdays. I always tell them happy birthday. And yeah, this is leading by vulnerability. So you have to lead, you have to be vulnerable as a leader by what you do. If you share them, you know, if you share them some things about you, they will also open up to you. And one secret about a team one secret about a team, if you want a team to be invulnerable from the outside, it has to be vulnerable inside the team. You know, you have to be vulnerable inside the team, but then the outside people, when they see, they will see that, oh, that team is invulnerable. That's the secret behind it. Okay, so what is the cost if we don't tend to embrace this kind of leadership in Africa? What will happen? Okay, so if we don't take this kind of leadership serious, then challenges like the ones that broke my heart, they will continue to grow. And also, without the leaders that are committed to their purpose, we will come up outdated and disrepair, like this machine, which you can see here. Africa will become like this if we don't want to change our ways. Okay. So with purpose, everything is possible. With purpose, elephants can even fly. Like this elephant you can see here. This elephant is flying. Yeah, so this picture was taken from a park in Mozambique, in a national park they call Gorongosa. Gorongosa is a park which was, it's a park which was, what do we call it? It was destroyed during the Civil War. It was completely, animals were killed. Like, there wasn't animals that remained there. But it took one person to bring it back. A man from America called Craig, if I remember his name correctly, Craig. He came to Mozambique. He stayed 2 years in Mozambique, searching, trying to find out how he can help Mozambique. You know, all the methods that I said people follow to find their purpose. He stayed 2 years. He was looking outward. How can I help? Yeah. And that's when he saw Ngorongosa and he said, I found my purpose. I found what I want to do. He invested all his money in Ngorongosa and brought back the animals. As we are talking now, Ngorongosa is a successful story. With purpose, everything is possible. Okay, so the future that we want for our Africa is not about getting results, but it's a future of getting results together, you know, getting results together. There's a difference between getting results and getting results together. The unique challenges that we are facing in Malawi and our incredible potential, it needs, I said Malawi, in Africa. Yeah, in Africa. It demands this kind of leadership. It demands this kind of leadership which doesn't just manage, but it nurtures. It clears the path for others. It wants the leadership that doesn't just care about profit, but it serves a greater purpose. So your journey starts right now. I want to ask you, after this talk, you should take 5 minutes, reflect on your life, and ask yourself 2 questions. The first one, what breaks your heart? Don't say love, please. Yeah, what breaks your heart? And the second one, what sparks your passion? This is your starting point. The path forward may not seem clear, but you as a young person from Africa, you can be clear on what matters to you. You can be consistent on how you show up for your people. And you can be curious about what your team needs from you. You are already reading, and you're reading in ways that truly matters. But what you need to do is just let purpose be your compass. If purpose becomes your compass, I'm telling you, confidence influence and impact, they will come to you naturally. They will follow you naturally. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Stella. You're so amazing. I always learn a lot from you. I think I share the same idea with the most of the audience. I could see their comments while you were speaking. You're so inspiring, and I think we did not only learn how to be purpose-driven leaders, but at some point we also learned to be better future parents. Because when you're speaking about how parents used to beat us without telling us the reason why, you took me back to some memories of myself in my childhood, and I learned a lot. I wrote down so many I'll call them quotes because they are quotes. You started saying that if everyone finds their purpose, we easily and positively shape the future of our continent, and that's very true. A continent that has people with a clear vision and purpose, then it's it's um it's a continent on the right track. You also say that purpose is your compass, regardless of what you may be going through. It keeps you on track. As of you, in 2020, you were going through grieving. There's COVID-19, so many issues around the world, but because you had a clear purpose, it kept you grounded, it kept you on track. It might not be negative experiences, they might be positive experiences that might took you out of your track, but having a
Yeah.
purpose as your compass, it keeps you grounded, and I can't agree more. Um, you also say that people choose to be accountable when they are trusted. Um,
Yes.
it's very true. When just like you said, when we were young and our parents used to, at some point, not always, used to trust us on some responsibilities. That's when you could feel like we belong, and the accountability was really high. You also say that when you're ending a presentation with purpose, elephants can fly. And for the audience, elephants are elephant is the favorite animal of Stella. I don't know why she didn't mention that, but seeing it flying, I was like, definitely you couldn't end your presentation without bringing in elephants. So yeah, I learned a lot, and we'll give time for the audience to also share their thoughts about your presentation. But before that, I'd like to welcome Dean on the screen. Um, just like I said when we were starting, Dean is not only an inspiring young leader, but also an interesting person we all can learn from. Young people, old people, we all can learn from what Dean did at a very young age. And before I dive into my questions, I would like to ask Dean if he has something he would like to emphasize on from Seller's presentation, something you would like to cement from what Seller shared with us. Please, you can have your time and emphasize that.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Robert. Thank you very much for the kind words and good evening to everyone. And I think I don't need to touch on any one thing that Sela said. I think it's just the whole presentation because Sela has right there embodied what leadership and conservation is all about. Like she shared her story of where she came to love conservation, her personal testimony, and then she did something in leadership that's the most important thing is if you can lie in your bed about to go to sleep knowing that you've done everything you can on that day to chase
Mm.
your purpose and make the difference that you feel you've been called to make, then you're in the right track. And Sela embodies that. And we've had the privilege of spending a lot of time with her over the last 5 years. So I don't think it's any one thing that she said, but I think it's just Sela as an individual and all that she
Yeah.
represents. So Sela, well done. Brilliant presentation.
Yeah. I I I
Thank
think
you, Dean.
all
Of
right.
course.
Well, Dean, first of all, without going through many things before we dive into so many questions, I'd like to ask you, it's really interesting for someone at 22 years old to have discovered what he wants in his life. I I'm speaking for myself. I remember at 22, I was conflicted, I was crowded, my thinking was really crowded. I just want to ask you, what was the defining moment when you first discovered your own purpose as a leader? I know it wasn't at 22. At 22, that's when the lessons in conservation started. I know it was something before that. So yeah, I would like to ask you, what was the defining moment?
Sure, Robert. I think I was extremely privileged to have been born and grown up in a conservation space. So there's a small private game reserve in the northeast part of South Africa, and my family are in wildlife translocation and management. So they established this game reserve. I was exposed to wildlife in a very real and meaningful way from when I was a little child. And you say 22 is when lessons in conservation started, but I actually found a piece of writing from when I was in grade 1 or 2 when you're learning how to write. And it said, like, what is your dream? And I said, I want to study zoology and I want to go and work in the game reserve and make a difference. And so I think I've been extremely fortunate to have known exactly what I want to do and kind of the path I want to follow from a very, very young age. And purely because of the experiences that I was born into, not because of anything I'd done. I always knew it would be involved in wildlife conservation, but I didn't know exactly what that route would be. But then there was one defining moment about 8 months into Lessons in Conservation's journey. And I mean, in those first 8 months, there's numerous stories I can share of when I was affirmed that this was the right thing to do just by small coincidences that to me didn't feel like coincidences. They felt like a real sign that this is something we need to commit ourselves to. But one of the first ever game drives we took was with a group of children with mental and physical disabilities. So as Sela mentioned, we do lessons before and then we take the children on excursions. And we were asked to do some lessons to these children with a variety of different mental and physical disabilities. And we then took them on a game drive with one of our partners. And there were 20 people on the back of this big game viewing truck, and 10 of them were able-bodied and minded, and 10 were not. And I'll never forget the moment, and there's actually a photograph of it, where I turned around from the front of the truck, and we were watching two male cheetah feeding on an impala. And it was a remarkable sighting. We were very close to the animals. They were very relaxed. And from the front of the truck, looking back, all 20 people had exactly the same expression on their face of just awe and wonder. And it reminded me then that regardless of what challenges they might be facing, wildlife and nature has the ability to change someone's life. And it's not just something you read about in a book. I watched it happen with my own eyes at the age of 22. And I think that was a moment that stuck with me and will stay with me probably till the day I die. And that even if you only get that one moment right, that's enough. And that's what we're doing is we continually trying to chase moments that can change someone's life.
Yeah. Um, that's when Sela was talking, she emphasized on the importance of storytelling, and you clearly demonstrated what that means. And you saying that you only need one clear defining moment. That's all you need. And yeah, it's really inspiring. And with young people, it's really hard. We sometimes have um passion. We grow up in an area that favors your passion, that makes you have more of that, but then translating that passion into action, usually it's really hard. I'd like to ask you, as someone who translated his passion into action, what's something we should look out for as young people? Um, it doesn't have to end with passion. It doesn't have to end with a written document. What should we look out for while translating your passion into action?
Yeah, I think that's something that people take too long thinking about a lot of time, I think, in my opinion, Robert. They think much about how to make their passion into action. And my advice would be just start. if you have a burning passion, just start, because the exact direction that it will take will change and morph. So my first bit of advice there would be just get on the ground and start chasing that passion, and talk about the ideas to other people. Once you verbalize it and commit to it, then you've got other people holding you accountable. So those two things would be my best bits of advice, because you're right. I mean, we work with students across the continent now, and we've realized so often that there's a lot of good ideas, but it's very difficult to translate that into action. So being brave enough to start, I think, is also key. That fear of failure that's within all of us, we need to try and put behind us and realize that if you're chasing a passion, you got to commit everything to it. And one of my favorite quotes says, chase down your passion like it's the last bus of the night. And I love that. In my head, I got this metaphor of this person. It's pouring with rain. They're running to the bus with their bag, and they're gonna keep running until they get to that bus, because they know if they miss it, they're gonna have to spend the night on the street. So you need to chase your passion with that kind of intent. Like if you don't catch that bus, you're gonna be in a bad situation. So that would be my advice: is be brave enough to try and talk about the ideas to your friends and your family.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's very interesting because in our was it in our second episode, our CEO Chris Murray talked about the importance of having a community around you that supports what you're working on. And you talking about the importance of sharing your ideas and passion to your family and friends. It makes it's like you're giving them because they'll keep asking you about it, and they'll keep asking you where far you are with your passion. And yeah, that's really interesting. And the quote of chasing down your passion as the last bus of the night, uh, even if the other bus can come, it might lead you into a direction you didn't want to arrive at. So
Exactly.
that makes really a lot of sense. And talking about chasing down your passion and making them a reality, as you have translated your passion into lessons in conservation, I'm sure at some point you were tested. You were like, should I go on, or um, should I um, rest and find something new to as a new endeavor? I'd like to ask you about your challenges, where you met challenges, how did you overcome them, what kept you grounded?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think anyone who chases their passion has had it tested. And I think that's actually a key revelation for me that I realized is it's not going to be smooth sailing. It doesn't matter how good the idea is or how well intentioned you are, there's going to be challenges, and you have to, the challenges are part of understanding that it's your true passion. Because if it's not a true passion, the moment there's challenges, you'll drop it. But the moment there's challenges in your true passion, you'll just absorb them and view the challenges and as opportunities to learn and grow. So there have been so many times that on this lesson conservation journey, I've thought, is this really the right thing to do? Particularly around funding, when it's really difficult to get funds, and you're questioning how we're going to be able to get the next kids on an excursion or the next set of lessons. It would be very easy to go and look for other ways to chase my passion, but I realized then in those moments how important the work is. And the thing with challenges is it forces you to introspect. So it forces you to look inside in yourself to review if this is really what you should be doing. And I
Mm.
think that's why challenges are a part of life, but overcoming them for me has always been relatively easy, because I just remember why I started. And we've got a bit of a theme this year within Lesson in Conservation, and it's every child matters. So, in amongst the bigger picture and in amongst all of the challenges, we just need to remember that every single child matters, and just remind ourselves why we started, because that's what will carry you through the difficult times.
Mm. Yeah, I my next question was some of the habits that keeps you grounded and keeps you on track, because in the current world is easily to be distracted. It can be easy to be distracted. And I think you answered it by saying that you always remind yourself why you started, and having that quote of saying that every child matters, I think, yeah, it's something that keeps you on track. Yeah. And my next question is about Selah's presentation, and she reminded us that purpose-driven leadership starts with a clear why. And for you and your work with lessons in conservation, what has been your guiding why? Was it every child matters, or was it something else?
Yeah, I think every child matters plays a big part, but I think from a personal point of view, my why was I realized I understood nature and wildlife in a real way purely because of the family I was born into, not because of anything I'd done. And my guiding why often was to realize we need to do whatever we can to change that narrative and make sure that other people who are not born into a situation where they are exposed to nature can be, and hopefully shift the way that their mindset can be towards wildlife and nature, and become ambassadors going forward that are far greater than just the few lessons that we can do. And I think also another really big why is the team members that we work with. So we have about 140 university students now working with us across the group. And one of our big whys outside of teaching kids is understanding that these university students that are involved in our programs are gaining skills and knowledge and confidence to go out into the working world and be real leaders in the conservation space or whatever space that they end up in. And I think hearing so many little success stories, Selah mentioned Charles Kamwana earlier there. The guy really epitomized the values. He's on his way to Oxford to do his master's. One of our other managers in Swaziland just become a qualified guide. So I think my why is in the people that we are building to continue to grow. And another quote, you seem to love quotes, Robert, so I'll keep you one or two every now and then, says, don't build things, build people. And that's really what we continue to try and do is our why is not to build things, but to build people, whether it's the children we teach or the university team members.
Thanks, Dean. I'm going to hop in quickly. I just wanted to say thank you so much for this discussion. Selah, your presentation was amazing. Thank you so much. And Dean, yeah, what a wonderful story of your life that you're telling us. And I'm going to ask a big question. In her presentation, Selah was describing what the cost of inaction is, and she had that image of all those rusting old equipment and things lying around in a shed. From your perspective, what is the risk if Africa fails to nurture purpose-driven leaders today?
That is a huge question, Kirsten, and I think that's something that a lot of us are spending a lot of our time trying to answer. But I think the reality is tomorrow will be affected. And that's the reality within conservation, is people often think about the immediate effects, and there will be some. But I think with Selah's imagery, that rusted old machinery, what's going to happen is these beautiful landscapes that we still have, though some have been damaged, there's still a vast number that have been really well protected and looked after. Those will not be the same in the future if we don't foster a connection between the young leaders that need to share this message with as many people as possible out there. So I think it's impossible to measure what the challenges will be and what the problems associated with the inaction will be, but we know that it'll be big, and we know that it'll have a knock-on effect across the continent, really. So we need to make sure that as much as the negatives associated with the cost of an action might come to our mind, I would always try and say, let's think about the positives of action and rather try and understand what we can do by making sure everyone is completely on board. And that's super exciting to think about, because the cost of an action scares me. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, well, you don't strike me as being somebody that that has a lack of action at all. So that's a good thing. Thank you. I'm going to ask a question which, Selah, you could also come in at any moment that you want to. But yeah, to Dean first. The purpose and vision often comes alive through stories. How can young leaders use storytelling effectively to inspire and mobilize others?
Yeah, I think that's something I actually feel very strongly about, because then it's something that I include in the training we do with all of our teams. And Sela, please do jump in here anytime. But I always say great stories happen to those who tell them. And with your work or your passion or whatever it is, obligation to share your stories. And I think oftentimes people are a little bit scared or shy to share their stories that they've been involved in, but it's absolutely key to the success of whatever it is you're doing going forward. And I think particularly in the conservation space, there's so many amazing stories that we're exposed to as we're teaching these kids in these areas wherever we might be. And you almost have an obligation to share them, because you never know what that story or the effect that that story might have on the person who's receiving it. And I think that's the key, is everyone will take different things out of the stories. Every single person on this meeting would have taken something slightly different from Sela's presentation. But the reality is she put the time together, or she put the time to put it together and share it. So we all need to make sure that we're sharing stories as much as possible. And Sela, I don't know if there's any stories that you can, or any answers to that you would like to add in.
I just want to agree with that. You know, when you're talking to someone, you talk to the heart, to the hands, and to the head. So stories mostly touch the heart of a person, because we humans are emotional. So if you want to get a person, you have to tap into their hearts. So stories are the only way that you can get to their hearts. I love telling stories, and every time when I'm out with the children, if I want to know what impact we have made in those children's life, would sit around the fire, the campfire, and I'll be asking them, what was your highlight today? And you will hear stories from them. They will tell you stories, that things that you didn't even think of. Like Dina said, that some people have, like all of us here, we have taken different, you have taken different things from my presentation. It's the same way. The children learn the same thing, but you hear different stories from from what they learned, you know? So like this other time, just a month ago, we're sitting on the fire, and as usual, I asked them, what was your highlight today? What did you learn today? And guess what? These children were from a school which is very far away, schools where even a car doesn't even, this covered car doesn't go, because the roads are very bad. And they had to use an open cab to come to the roads, and the road then get a closed car from there to the park. And then one of them said, I'm so happy because I've gotten to get some water from the shower for the very first time. I have never bathed water from the shower, you know? So that showed me that we weren't just teaching them conservation, but we showed them things that are here in the outside. So stories are a good thing to get to use, because you get different things from the stories.
Beautiful,
Thanks,
Sela. And yeah, I think to wrap up, because in storytelling can inspire people. And I think that's the most important part of telling stories, is you never know what it might lead to for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, actually, just before we started this whole session, you were talking about that little beautiful blue sunbird that you had seen in Pemba. And yeah, I mean, that's a story in itself of like, just, you know, how it's so obviously so endemic and so precious. And yeah, that's definitely stuck in my mind. So yeah, the power of even little tiny snatches of a story, really beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, future outlook. Just to say that yeah, Robert is here still in the room. His computer battery was just on the edge of dying, so that's why I've taken over. Looking ahead, how do you see youth-led initiatives like Lessons in Conservation shaping Africa's leadership and conservation story over the next decade? Dean, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. I think it's going to be a challenge to shift a lot of narratives in a lot of places. And I think it's actually something that Chris Murray from the LCA mentioned to me once. He mentioned a youth movement, and I really liked the wording he used there. And I think what that comes down to is we need young people leading other young people into tomorrow. And it sounds crazy, but a lot of the same stories and the same narratives have been shared for a long time now, particularly within the conservation space. And I like the analogy of handing over the baton, where it's now over to us to the next generation who are going to be living with these problems in the future and raising families and these problems in the future. So it's up to us to create the solutions that will solve them. So I honestly believe that leadership is not like a title. It doesn't even have to necessarily come with experience. I think it has to be the way that you live your life. And it has to be through lessons in conservation. What we're trying to do is make sure that everyone is brave enough to start, because the leaders of today will be the policymakers of tomorrow and the ones who are going to really be able to shift the needle towards a positive environmental impact. So it's hard to picture exactly what the impact will look like, but we know that if you continue to build people, not things, those people will go out into whatever sphere or sector they will be in and make a meaningful change and difference. And in my head, I always picture lots of little circles. And if you can influence one person's life, that's a circle. And that person then influences 2 or 3 other people's lives. And then the circles begin to grow. And eventually, in my head, what I would love is if the people we've influenced through lessons in conservation across the continent can meet up at a coffee shop one day, and then the circles from different walks of life start to join. And eventually we color in the whole of Africa with people who have been positively influenced. And that's when you make real change. It's when you get past that critical mass of people who care. And that's what we're striving for.
Thanks, Dean. I love the circles. I have got one more question, but I'm going to hand over to Charles Kamwana. Charles, go ahead and ask your question.
Right. Okay. So I have a question going to Sela. I am asking this question because of the nature of most of African countries and the way we are raised in Africa. I will first of all ask that just to out of curiosity to know what Sela's purpose is. So I would just want to hear from her what her purpose is. And following that, I would like to know how did she, much as I shared the story, but I understand knowing a purpose is closely related to self-awareness. And in Africa, we are not really taught to be aware of ourselves. We are not really taught to embrace what we feel like we have to do in life as a purpose. For example, if we even go in places, ask children what they want to do in future when they grow up, the answers that you're going to have are the usual answers, because that is what we've been fed about the employment opportunity and other things in Africa. So in short, I just wanted to know what should we do to make sure that the young people that we are nurturing are in a position to know their purpose. And by knowing their purpose, I'm pretty sure that they are also going to build their passion and vision for their future. So yes, I don't know if my question is very clear.
Stella, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you so much, Charles, for your question. And those are like 3 questions. Okay. The first one, what is my purpose? Okay, I didn't say it because I was waiting to see if people will ask me, what's your purpose? Okay, so my purpose is to help people understand that they can coexist with nature, benefit from it, but without destroying it. Because I don't want the distraction like the one that happened in my mother's village to happen somewhere else again. That's why I'm teaching and teaching and teaching, and I'm loving it. So your second question was, how do you know your purpose? Okay, so I think there are several ways how you can know your purpose. The first one, I will use my own, the one that I used is through the past experience. And I think this is Dean's as well, because, you know, and I love what Robert said, that it can be good or bad experience. Mine was bad and Dean was good. Yeah, but then both of us, our purpose is connected to our past. And then another way on how you can know your purpose is by asking yourself, looking inward, looking at yourself, what do you like enjoying? What do you enjoy doing? What is your passion? That would help you to know your purpose. The third way is by asking yourself, what legacy do you want to be remembered with? 50 years from now, when I'm gone, what do I want people to remember Sela with? If you ask that question to yourself, you'll be able to find what your purpose is. And the fourth method is looking outward. What do I have? What other people might benefit from? Yeah, so those are the 4 ways. I don't know if Dean wants to add something from there, but then that's how you can come to know your purpose. And I know I can relate to what you said about us being raised without knowing what we are good at, what we are interested in. Yeah, that's the case, especially here in our country, Malawi, because I also went through the same. I went to teaching because that's where it was my dad's dream. Yeah, so he wanted me to be a teacher. And so in Malawi, because we are not taught when we're young, like they don't take time to understand what we like, what we do, what our interest in. So that's hard. But then the 4 questions can lead us to understanding. And one thing that we should know, it's never too late to understand what your purpose is. Even at 50, you can find your purpose and you can still do it. Like the guy from America, the one that brought back the reserve in Mozambique. He was still asking himself, what can I do for Mozambique? He spent 2 years searching on what he can do for Mozambique until he saw the park and said, oh, I want to do this. I want to bring back the animals to this park. Yeah, so that's how I can answer. Do you want to add something?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Sela. Brilliant answer. It was a long question from Charles, but it was a good one. So I think between you answered it very well. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sela and Dean. And thank you, Karsten. What in the presentation that Sela gave us, she talked about the importance of a team. And I couldn't agree more having Sela around. No, I mean Karsten around, jumping in while I was struggling. It's really fortunate that she was around. I saw Kevin Mujisha having a question. He raised his hand. If he can unmute himself and ask his question.
So first I want to thank Sela and Dean for the wonderful session. And my question goes to Sela, and it's about if you were starting your conservation journey today, what would you do differently? Yeah.
Wow, Kelvin. Wow, that's a good question. Okay. Let me see what I would do differently. I think what I would do different and what I'm doing this year is to connect a lot with other organizations so that we amplify our impact, because there are a lot of other countries that I mean other organizations that we somehow share our mission with. So and we can benefit from them, because as up to now we have been teaching children, but then it has been minimal because of resources and everything. But I think if we can partner with lots of people, lots of organizations here in Malawi, then we'll be able to reach out to lots of numbers. So what I'm doing different this year, I mean next year, the plan starting from next month to the other year is to partner with lots of organizations that we somehow share our mission. Yeah, Kelvin, I hope I answered your question. That was a good question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I thank you, Sela. I think if anyone can do half of what you did in conservation, I think he or she would be in a better position to have served well this continent. Having met you for the first time, I could see passion in your eyes, and with a question that Kevin asked, wow, you answered it really well, but then to me, you can't change. If you're having to change anything, then I'm afraid you would the children you have touched would the number wouldn't be as much as you did. And yeah, I have one question that goes to Dean as a young leader in conservation. If you could leave every participant here with one challenge or call to action to take forward, what would it be?
That's a great question, Robert. And I think having something attainable will make the most sense. So to inspire one person to care about conservation, I think that would be my challenge. And however you do that is completely up to you. But an example I always use is the supermarkets in South Africa. A lot of them still use plastic bags. And when someone offers you a plastic bag, which we know is detrimental to the environment, explain to them why you're not accepting the plastic bag, and then pull out your own reusable bags and just get them to understand. It will take 30 seconds of your day, but that can shift someone's entire view. So my challenge would be every single person here. Remember, I mentioned those little circles, those spheres of influence. If everyone can inspire one person to care, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's really a very good call to action, because if we are, let me see, 14 available now, but if we can at least influence someone to care, one person, then that would be 28. 28 would also touch some others, and the chain will grow as much as that. And we're towards the end of our event tonight, but I will use the power I have as a host and ask my final question to Dean. I know Lessons in Conservation has been in so many countries across Africa, but I am in Rwanda. I'm a Rwandan, and I'm asking, when are you coming to this beautiful country?
Robert, I've got the best answer for you, and that we are already there. We partnered with African Parks, and we do work in Nyungwe National Park and Akagera National Park, and we'll be heading up. I actually arrive in your country on the 17th of this month for 3 weeks.
Nice.
To be doing environment education training in and around the volcanoes area as well. So we're already there, and we'll see you soon, hopefully. If you're based in Rwanda, let me know. I'd love to meet up.
Definitely. And it's not just me, there's Kevin, there's Diane, and so many others that will be happy to connect with you.
Beautiful.
And yeah, that's I hope you bring Sela. And that's it.
We'll be in Kigali from the 26th to the 28th of September. So we'll see you then.
Oh, nice. So thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate you all, and good night.